You know, so often we hear about young people who make headlines for all the wrong reasons. So I decided to bring you a show filled with positive young role models. Tonight, our Issues features some amazing young people here in Tampa Bay. All of my guests are only in their 20s and already tremendously successful in their young careers as an author, the COO of one of the largest fabricating companies in the U.S., and a very determined race car driver. Hello, I'm your host, Jen Holloway. My first guest has a bachelor's degree in journalism, along with a master's degree in rehabilitation and mental health counseling from the University of South Florida. She's a staff writer for the Tampa Bay Times, and recently she learned her first book will be published in the fall of 2014, and all of this by the age of 28. Arlene Spenceley, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell us what your book is going to be about.
Well, my book will be about love, chastity, and sex from a Catholic perspective, the perspective of a Catholic single woman.
Okay, and why that topic?
Well, I think in our culture we're surrounded by sex. We're constantly bombarded by sex and things that remind us of sex. I mean, like Miley Cyrus can swing in naked on a wrecking ball. Like we are literally bombarded by these things. And I think if we don't talk about it, our only conception of sex comes from the media or comes from the world around us, which may or may not be an accurate depiction. And as a Catholic, I believe that, you know, love is a prerequisite for sex, marriage is a prerequisite for sex. And so if we don't introduce it, especially within the church, what we end up is having a bunch of people who are maybe waiting until marriage to have sex, but they're waiting until marriage to have the kind of sex that, you know, we see on TV, which isn't real.
You mentioned the word chastity. That's not a word we hear very often in today's society. In your definition, what does that mean?
Well, I think it's interesting the way chastity is used in our culture, because I've heard so many people use it interchangeably with the word abstinence. And abstinence, it's pretty self-explanatory, I think. You're abstaining from sex until marriage. That's what that means. But chastity and abstinence are not actually the same. Chastity does require a person to abstain from sex until marriage, but chastity doesn't end at marriage. And it's not just for single people or married people, it's for priests and nuns. Everybody can practice chastity. And the ultimate goal of chastity is to really make your life about love. It involves, I guess you could say, self-mastery. What you would do is you govern your appetites instead of being governed by them. And that could be a sexual appetite, or that could be some other kind of appetite, but you are in control. Rather than saying, like, I have this urge, so I'm going to act on it right now. Right. You kind of think critically and say, is it a good thing for me to act on this urge? Are there other ways I can kind of expend this energy?
Now, this is taught to you through your church, but were you influenced by parents, friends, anyone in particular?
I've had a lot of influences. I have quite possibly the best parents ever. I love them, and they've taught me so much. My other greatest influence is actually Blessed Pope John Paul II, who was soon to be a saint. A couple summers ago, I picked up a book that he wrote before he was even Pope, actually, called Love and Responsibility. I owned it for a few years, but I could not comprehend it. It was so heavy with just philosophy. But after a few years, I was able to read it, and it changed my life, and it changed just my entire perspective of love.
All right. I want to read some of your titles of your columns in the Times. Some of your Times articles include Why I'm Still a Virgin at 26, Why I Will Be a Virgin Until I'm Married, A 20-something Learns About Needs and Wants. Not typical titles you see every day. Being in the paper, I'm sure there was response to that, positive and negative. Tell me about that experience for you.
Oh my goodness. The feedback was overwhelming.
Really?
The first sex essay I wrote, I received emails about it for at least 2 years, obviously sporadically as time went on. But the second one, I think it had 15,000 views on the web in the first month that it was online. I received emails, phone calls, comments. Within maybe the first hour or two that my second sex essay was on the web, they had to shut it down, not the article, but the comments, because the personal attacks were coming in so quickly that the web editors couldn't keep up to moderate it. I've been told, you're a virgin because I can't tell if you're a man or a woman. I've been told, there was a letter to the editor once that said, "You're probably not a hot babe. That's probably why you live this lifestyle." Lot of attacks on my appearance, and I've emails and phone calls from people saying, "I don't know what you mean to accomplish by trying to encourage people to live a chaste life." So I mean,
you just want good for others.
Exactly.
And
and I'm just.
Well, Arlene, in light of all the bullying that we've all talked about recently, you've been bullied in your professional career. What advice do you have for young folks who may be going through the same thing in a different scenario?
Well, ultimately, the conclusion that I've come to is that every human being is of infinite value just because we exist. And what other people think of you, what other people think of me, has absolutely no effect on your value and your worth as a human being. And so I remind myself of that, and I would encourage people who are in situations that are like that, where they're being bullied, just to remind yourself that what other people think is irrelevant.
We're all special in our own way. Why is your message so important in today's society?
People primarily think of chastity or abstinence even as something that is geared toward teenagers. My target audience is actually young adults, and I think it's important for young adults for two reasons. Number one, one of the latest statistics that I've read says that 98% of women who are in their 20s and above and 97% of men aren't virgins, whatever that might mean. I don't know if that's a variety of definitions, but either way, that means that there are only 2% or 3% of women who ultimately, or men and women who haven't had sex. Small percentage, but they're out there, and I want them to know that they're not alone and that there is merit to choosing not to have sex if you're not married. And the second reason would be there are a lot of unhappy adults in our culture, and I'm not going to say that that is or is not related to how they live their sexuality out, but I do want to present an alternative, because if what they're doing isn't working out, maybe this is something they can try.
You have a moment now to reach our audience. I'm sure there are young people and elderly people watching. What is your advice? What do you want to share with people? What do you want to leave them with tonight?
I think ultimately what I would want to leave people with is how important it is to live your life for somebody or something other than and greater than yourself. I think people will be really surprised. We live in a culture that encourages self-focused choices, but I think there's a lot more fulfillment to be found in doing things for other people.
All right. Arlene, thanks for your time. We look forward to reading your book in 2014.
Me too.
And we expect a great response from that. Thank you for joining us, and you're definitely a mover and shaker in your 20s, and I think it's great. And you're an inspiration to others. When we come back, a young man who's gone from an automated parking garage manager to the leader of a company moving millions of tons of metal in and out of Tampa Bay. Stay with us for his success story.